What equipment do you actually need to start your candle business? Hi, I'm Gina, the owner of Dark Pines Candles, and that's the question I'm going to answer for you today. So let's get started. So when I started my business, as you know from the previous video, I hadn't made a candle, a single candle in my life. So I ordered a kit that came with a double boiler, and what that is a hot plate with a pan that you put water in, and then another pan that you put on top of that so that when the water boils, it will melt the wax or whatever you have in there. A lot of people use double boilers in the kitchen for melting like chocolate or something, and it's the same process. So I did that. I started with that. It also came with a thermometer, which you do need for sure. It came with a stirring spoon. Not this exact same one, but it did come with a stirring spoon. It was like a metal, almost like a tea stirring spoon that I've had before. It came with a pack of wicks, a pack of wick stickers, some warning labels, and like 6 containers. So that was my very first start at making candles. And funny thing is that's really mostly what you need. Like, you need something to melt your wax, you need a vessel to put it in, you need your scent, you need a wick and a wick sticker to adhere the wick to the container, and your warning label and something to stir it, and measure the temperature. So that's what I started with, bare bones. That was it. You can do that too, and you can keep that going. You can actually sustain using a double boiler for quite a while in your candle business. I did end up purchasing a scale because once you get away from the kit, then you actually have to measure things more. And so I've got this little tiny food scale that I use and for measuring my wax and for measuring my fragrance oil, so that I'm making sure that I get the right amounts, because sometimes your wax only accepts a certain percentage of fragrance oil. So you do need to do some measuring, and so those are good to have. When I did start making more candles than just a couple at a time, I did have to do a little bit of upgrading. So I found that I needed a bigger stirring and pouring pitcher, and so I went to my local craft store and I just picked up one of these in their little 5-foot candle section, because when you go to a craft store, their candle sections are pretty small. There's not a lot there. I have also used my Pyrex measuring cup to do the same thing. So if you're not ready to go with the big guy, you can totally use the measuring pitcher you have in your house, or just get yourself one of these. It's fine. I have one this is a 1 cup. I also have a 2 cup, and then I have an 8 cup of the glass Pyrex measuring cups. And they work great, especially if you have like candle wax that you can microwave, because sometimes you do need to reheat it if you're getting busy doing some other stuff, you get distracted by your kids, your cat, or whatever. You may need to reheat your wax again to get it back up a temperature for pouring or mixing in your fragrance oil. And the glass is great for that. I did also get a microwave. That's right here behind me. I waited until they were on sale for Thanksgiving, and I bought one, just a small, basic of the most basic, just for, like I said, reheating the wax if I needed to. But you don't have to do that. If you don't want to, you can also put that back on the double boiler. So once you can keep depending on the temperature settings of your hot plate or your stove, you could keep your temperature of your wax pretty regulated just by keeping it over the hot water. And I've done that a lot too. So that is totally fine to do, and you don't have to have extra equipment if you don't want to be able to keep the wax warm and hot enough to pour and mix your oils in. I got myself some tweezers. I know that sounds stupid, but the different companies that make wick stickers, Some of them will put little tabs right there so you can just pull it off. Most of them don't. And I found that a set of tweezers has been a godsend for getting the paper off of the top of the wick sticker so I can put the wick tab on there. And that also is something that if you have an extra one in your house, just abscondate it and stick it in your candle stuff. The kit that I got actually came with a significant amount of wick stickers, so I didn't have to buy any for a while. But once I did have to buy some more, I just went on to Amazon and got like a pack of like 700 of them. Because it really, there's like a couple sizes, but for the most part, you're probably going to use the larger size. If you don't, if your wicks are smaller, like the wick tabs are smaller for you, like, oh, here we go. Like this one, that one's a pretty small wick tab compared to that one. Like, look at that. Huge difference in size. So I did get some smaller wick tabs, and there was no way that my fingernails were going to get the paper off of that. So the tweezers have been amazing for getting those wick stickers ready to put the tabs on. They also came with wicks. It came with generic, they don't even tell you what size they are, so you don't even know what you're getting. You're just trusting that they'll work in the jars that they send you. Not what I would do going forward with your candle making. You definitely want to do some wick testing with specific sizes so you can recreate your result every time. There's great companies for purchasing your wicks. There's Candle Science, there's Amazon. You can get, if you can find the size you need, you can get them in 100 packs or more. Black Tie Barn has a good selection of wicks. Makesy. I never have had a lot of good results trying to get them from my craft store because they're never the right size or the right kind, so I probably wouldn't recommend you do that. I recommend you do either Amazon or some kind of an actual candle supplier for your wicks. I use a couple different kinds because the diameter, the outside diameter of my jars are a little bit different. I also like to use wood wicks, and so I buy a bunch of these, and that's what those bigger wick tabs were for. These go for the wood wicks. And they have multiple sizes of those too, based on your jar size. But I just get them off of Amazon. You just want to make sure you're getting the ones you want in the right thickness and the right size. But once you've got your size squared away, you order them wherever you want. The thermometer came in my kit, which I was really surprised about because I wondered if it would really have everything I needed, and it did. So it came with a digital thermometer, which was very nice and handy. A lot of them will come with the glass candy thermometer, and that works just as well too. I did upgrade later though to this thermal gun one. This is really nice when you're not like, when you just want to get a fast read. You just, and it tells you what my table is 74.1 degrees right now. And so that was what they sent you in the basic kit. Was you got a bag of wax, you got some scents, you got 6 jars with lids, warning stickers. They came in just like a sheet, which was, they gave you more than what you need for the jar, so you just save them and use them later on other ones. Same with the wick stickers, way more than you needed for the amount of jars you had, so you save those and use them too. And they did the same with the wicks. There were more than 6 wicks in the pack, and they only sent 6 jars. So you got a little bit of extra, you got a few extra things that you get to keep and just use later. What it didn't have in it though was, it didn't have the alcohol that you need to clean your jar, because you always want to give your jar a quick spray and wipe it out with your paper towels so that you can make sure that your wick adheres to the bottom of it and there's no like dust or debris in here to contaminate your candle. And you just wipe it out like that. I mean, it's super simple, super easy, no big deal. But that obviously didn't come with the kit. You just have to have it on your own. Most people have rubbing alcohol and paper towels in their house, so it's not a huge in position on you for that. It also came with a couple of these wick setters, like these. They're a universal bow tie wick setter, and you just set it on your jar. Well, I guess you go that way. You set it on your jar like that. You make sure that your wick is in the center and just let it sit there after you... This is a holder, not a setter. I apologize. So that once it's curing and cooling off, the wick is staying in the right place. That being said, they're not my favorite. They do the job, but not my favorite. I tried these guys. They're just popsicle sticks with a hole in the middle. And very simple, very inexpensive. I got like 100 of them for $5. But you do still have to make sure that this is staying in the center of your jar so that your wick's not moving around, because if you bump it, the wick's going with it. So I got those. Those came in the kit, which is nice because you don't always know what you need when you're first starting. I did find though that it only came with 2, so I needed more, and I didn't have them, and so I had some straws in my house from my daughter's birthday party, and so I took those and I cut them in half, and I took a rubber band, and I'm just going to use these wicks to show you what I did. I put the rubber bands on the sides to hold them together, and then I stuck the wick through the middle of the 2 straws and just let it held it there like that with that, which does the same thing as this guy. I just didn't have them. So I made something, and you can do that too. It's really whatever you want. You could bind together a couple pencils. You could bind together a knife, or like little butter knives, or whatever you want to do. People use clothespins to hold the wicks in their jars. My jars are too wide for that, but I've seen it done a lot, and it's a very inexpensive way to have the same result as a professional wick holder. And so when you're starting out, do things like that. Use what you have in your home. Save yourself some money on equipment while you're getting started, because you don't want to blow up the bank while you're still figuring out how to make money in the first place. I did not have a wick setter in there, which was kind of a bummer, because having never set a wick in my life, I didn't quite know what I was doing, and I had a really hard time getting it centered in the long jars that they sent. But that was another thing where I was like, well, necessity's the mother of invention, so I'm gonna have to figure this out. So I actually went back to the bag of straws, and I cut it down to a manageable size where I could get the wick to go all the way through the top of it. And I'll just show you on my setter here, because it's really the same process. So this looks like a straw. I just stuck it in the bottom until it was poking out, and I just kind of bent it over so I could hold it so it wouldn't fall out. And then I just plop right in the middle of the jar. I kind of eyeballed it at first, and that didn't work very well for me because apparently my eyeballs don't work. But once I got that part sorted out, I made a template from the bottom of my jar. I just traced the outside of it on a piece of paper and put a dot in the middle, and then that worked fine with the straw and the wicks. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. So that was another thing that I already had at home that I didn't have to spend a bunch of money on to be able to effectively use in my business and starting making my candles. And that was really great. So I highly recommend finding those things that you can use in your house already when you're starting. You'll figure out later on what you want to upgrade to, but when you're first starting, everything looks great. Everything is that shiny object that you have to have, but in reality, you probably don't. And you're probably going to figure out that you didn't like it. Like, I got a couple different wick setters early on, and this one is supposed to be a universal, which it is, but it was so hard to keep this guy's centered, like this dude would move around like that all the time. And so I'd still end up with a off-centered wick. It took me a little while to figure out that I could do my wood wicks with this too, because I looked at it when I first got it and I was like, that's not going to fit a wood wick. What is happening? And then I felt like an idiot when I realized this unscrews and you can put them in that way. But live and learn. We all have our days. So that one I just keep as a backup, but it's not my favorite. This was another option that I got. Now this is magnetic. And so ideally, you should be able to stick your jar on this and make sure it's in the right spot. And let's just try it and see if I can get a wick to, I have yet to be able to get a wick to actually magnetize to that. We'll try a wood one and see what happens. Oh no, let's just try one of these. Yeah, so we'll just try this metal one. We'll see if it actually works. So I'm just gonna hold it right there and let's see if this will find its mark. Nope, it doesn't even care. It doesn't even know there's a magnet there. So that didn't work. That was $15 down the drain that did nothing. The only reason I kept it was to show you the different things you can find, that some work, some don't. This one is a great one. It's actually a wood wick setter, and so you put these little white guys, these little white tabs are, you move them to match up with the diameter of your container, and then once you got them set there, just sits on top like that, and you put your wick in here. So I'll do one of those real quick and show you. Apparently I need extra hands. But you just stick it in there like that. And the nice thing about this one, I didn't know this until I started using it, it magnetized to that, so it holds it. So because this is so long and the wick is not that long, I was afraid it was going to fall out, and then I realized it was a magnet. And so you stick that in the bottom of here. You line this up with the top of your jar, and then you just let the plunger fall. Like, see? Bloop, and it's right in the middle. Obviously, you have to make sure that these are set correctly. But, I mean, that's pretty basic, and I love it. This one was actually made for me, and it's the same idea as the wood one. You just stick your wick in here like this. Stick it in there. Whoops, it's falling out because I didn't do the top part. You put the top in those little grooves and kind of fold it over just so you can kind of keep a handle on it. And this is made to be the exact circumference of my jar. So you see how it fits right on top of that. You put the wick, well, usually I do this when it's all put together, but apparently I am not working like that today. So you put it in there just like you did the other one, hold it over, stick it on your jar, and let the plunger fall down, and then you've got your perfectly centered wick. So that's what I upgraded to from the straw and the template that was, I would set it on. This has been really great, especially since I'm making more candles at this time. Sorry, my cat's over there like rolling himself down the stairs or something. I don't know. But that made it a lot faster for me. But when I was starting out and I was only doing a few candles at a time, the straw worked perfectly. I mean, I would totally still be doing that if I wasn't making like dozens at a time. I did also upgrade my wick setters, like holders. Sorry, that was the setter. This is a holder. This one I got from Norden Candle Supply. They make them to also the exact specifications of your container. So it just sits right on top, and I put the wick through there. I'll show you when it's already done. And it just holds it, and then you pour, this is big enough so I can pour the candle in here right now, and it will just hold the wick in place until it's dry or cured, and then I pop it off and I trim it. And so that has also been an upgrade that's been really nice now that I'm doing a lot more candles than I was before. But until I started making some money, I just used the straws and the little ones that I already had. Like, I didn't make a big deal about it. So, and you don't have to either, because it is, like I said, way cheaper. Like, they're not like break the bank, but they are still expensive. And so you want to make sure you got everything else sorted out first, like the containers you're using and all that, so that you're not buying a bunch of them and then changing your container and having to start over. So once I got through all of that, figured it out, I was in business. I was making my candles, figuring out my vendors, and I also wanted to keep trying to save some money and not, I noticed that like I'd get my wicks and I would put them in here and look how much is left over. Like, that's a lot. And so I would trim them, and I watched a video on YouTube, and I can't even remember who it was, but if I figure it out, I will link it, because they were a lifesaver in teaching some of these things. They would trim the wicks off. So here's what was trimmed off. And they bought a bag of these extra wick tabs, and they would take that leftover, stick it through the tab, take some needle nose pliers that you already have at home, and just squeeze it, and then you can reuse that wick on a smaller jar. And so you're saving some money because you're already using something you have and that you already paid for. And so I still do this all the time. Like, I have 3 different sizes of containers. So I have my 8-ounce jars, my 4-ounce, and then I also do a 2-ounce tin. I can get all 3 of those wicked with one of these long wicks because I do that with the tabs. So it's something that can be a little tedious, but if I've come home from my regular job and I've had a long day and I'm tired and I need to still get something done, that's what I do. I have a container that has all the wick trimmings, and then I have another container with 1,000 of these wick tabs, and I just start tabbing, and I'm still getting something done, but I don't have to use my brain to do it. So that's another great way to save money, and I wouldn't stop doing that. I mean, that's not something you need to upgrade from. Why would you want to waste something you don't have to? So highly recommend doing that and keeping a pack of those wick tabs around so that you can reuse the trimmings of your wicks and not waste them. I love that somebody was doing that and showed me. And you can get the tabs in different sizes, just like you can get the wick stickers in different sizes. So you just figure out what you need for the wicks that you're using and just buy a cheap bag of those tabs. Like, I think I got like 250 of them for $5. So you're spending $5 to save a lot more later, because buying wicks is definitely more expensive than that. So if you can get 3 candles out of 1 wick, why would you not do that? We're also using a lot of alcohol and paper towels. This doesn't come in my kit, but I use this to clean everything and to spray the jars like I showed you before. So I guess I did already talk about the alcohol. But I also clean out my station with it. I clean off my stirring stick. I clean out my pouring pitcher. Like, I use the alcohol and paper towels for everything. So buy it by the gallon. You're gonna need it. And then have it have a good spray bottle, because that is very important to making this work. You want to have that anytime. Wick trimmers. You can get the actual wick trimmer, which that's what it looks like. It didn't come in my kit, but I did buy one right after. And this one kind of gives you that measurement of 1/4 of an inch that most candles say to trim your wick to. But you don't have to have this, because you can just as easily trim with a pair of scissors. And I did that at first. And I did that for a while, but people kept stealing my scissors, so I ended up just buying a wick trimmer that they couldn't use for anything else. But if you don't have little klepto children that take your scissors, then go ahead and just use those. Save yourself 15 bucks. I would. The other thing I did to save some money in the beginning was when I was testing candles and figuring out my scents and all of that stuff, I would actually like reuse my jars for testing. Now, I'm not selling the jars that I'm reusing, because you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that what you're giving to your customer has its full integrity. And mason jars are great. They're going to last forever, and you probably could reuse them, refill them for somebody and give it back to them and be totally fine. But it's never recommended to do that, and so I don't. But I do use them for testing my new scents. So I will clean them out. This one still has a little bit of candle stuff in it because I just emptied that one. I will make a new candle in this so I can test out a wick. I can test out a scent. I can test out a wax. And so I save them so that I can do that, like this one too. This one is part of my spring collection. It's my, oh my God, it's my Petal and Pine scent that I'm just releasing. And so I was doing a test burn. So I'm just going to get the rest of the wax out of here and the wick, and I'm going to clean it, and I'll use that for testing another candle or another scent later. Especially if you're using the same ones all the time. Because if you're not changing the type of jar you're using, then just reuse your testers and then sell your pretty ones that haven't been used yet, like this. This one's never been used. Brand new out of the box. This is what I'm going to sell after I've tested in the ones back there. But that really kind of goes over everything. You're having all your measuring pictures and all your stuff, but a lot of the things that you use as far as equipment go, you can get right out of your home. So you do not have to drop a bunch of money at first. You can start small and then upgrade as you go, and you can afford to once you're actually bringing an income in. And in our next video, I will talk to you about what you can upgrade to, because that's fun. I kind of like that. I love the new things all the time, so I'm going to show you about those. If you want to see more of my videos, hit the subscribe button and click on the bell notification to let you know when they're coming in. If you want to try out any of my candle scents and room sprays and diffusers, go to darkpinescandles.com. And if you have any comments, put them down below. I will read them, and maybe we'll try another video out of them. Have a great day.